Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of my podcast. This time I have Anezka, who I met in Canada, but she's also from Czech Republic, and she moved to Yukon around the same time as me. And I would like to talk to her about her experience starting new in Canada. Welcome, Anezka.
Thank you for having me. Hi,
Perfect.
everyone.
So let's just jump straight into it. You moved to Canada from Czech Republic. What was it, 2011-ish?
Yeah, that was in 2010, and the
2010.
only way I remember it is because there was Winter Olympic Games in Vancouver at that time. That's how I remember.
Oh, okay. So it was like that. What inspired you or motivated you to move to Canada?
I initially didn't really see it as a moving there. I just finished my university and I thought that like it would be good to have a change, maybe go there for a year because that was originally the length of my visa, work visa, and then yeah, just to learn more English because I didn't really speak anything or much. So yeah, that was what initiated it.
Right. And was there any like a pivotal moment? Something happened in Czech Republic where you were like, okay, I'm going, or why did you
Um,
decide for Canada? Because there were other options for working visa.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the reason for it was my dog. I originally wanted to go to Australia because my sister was there already for a year. So I felt like this would be a good change, like I'd never been to Australia versus I've been to Canada when I was 15 once. But then I ran into problems comes to my dog because yeah, apparently you can't really travel to Australia with your dog because they have to be in quarantine just because Australians they don't have rabies there. So then I was like, well, Canada is pretty great. I've been there once, so let's try that. And that's how that happened because of my dog.
Perfect. So the dog decided here. What challenges did you face when moving to a new country, if you can remember?
Yeah, so definitely it was a language for me. I learned English at school in Czech, and then even at university, I traveled quite a bit, but I just didn't really learn much. For me, it's more of a hands-on learning. So I really thrived in this environment. So the biggest challenge was definitely language for me.
Right. And how did you get over it? Did you have any strategy how to
Um,
improve your language when you moved to Canada, when you started new?
by living here, and I was pushed to communicate more. I was pushed to start over just going to different offices to do my paperwork to then when I decided that I want to stay here or at least as a permanent resident, I had to deal with the whole application by myself, and it was the biggest learning lesson just to kind of stay with it and deal with it and do it every day. And there are definitely ups and downs because especially after finishing university in one country, you think like, do I really want to start over and now become a house cleaner and do all this? Like it was quite tough sometimes, but I just had this vision that I did wanted to get better in the language. So it was mostly interactions with others.
I see. And how did you navigate the cultural differences?
I think that kind of came in time. I find that Canada is very welcoming country, very inclusive, especially in the Yukon. There's a lot of immigrants. So even though you can have an accent, everybody is very welcoming. So I think that was a factor that definitely helped.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was talking to my friend from elementary school. She moved to UK and stayed there. And she said that she always felt like an immigrant there. And for me, I have never felt like an immigrant in Canada. I never felt like somebody different. I almost felt
Yeah.
like the superstar because everybody is like, "Ooh, you're from Europe. That's cool."
Yeah, exactly. I just felt I could be myself here. That was like one of the biggest feelings I felt at first that nobody really judges you that hard as
Mhm.
in Czech or maybe Europe
That's
in
true.
general. So that was really nice.
That is very true. What resources and support system did you use? Like, for example, me, when I moved there, I moved with some Czech people and I stayed with Czech people at the beginning. So, what worked for you?
As a support systems, I would say it was always kind of a connection with my family and especially with my sister who was in Australia at the time. Also finding some Czech people. When I got to Canada, I flew into Vancouver and then I lived in Kamloops, BC, and I lived with friend of my friend who was also Czech, married to a Canadian. They actually recently moved to the Yukon, which is quite funny. But I think that was the biggest help and biggest support right at the beginning where you're kind of struggling to understand the systems and navigate through that, you know. So definitely friends and also for the emotional support, always like my family back in Europe. Yeah, that's
That's nice.
probably.
Cool. And did your sister went through something similar then when she moved to Australia, where you kind of like exchanging notes?
Yes, in a way, yes and no, because like I feel that I left with my backpack and a dog, and I basically knew that I can stay somewhere for 4 days, and then I might be looking for something else to live. And I also had almost no money after I paid my flight ticket and everything. I had basically $400. So for me, it was like I have to find some room somewhere ASAP and also find a job. But then it all worked out itself. I was able to stay where I was staying initially, so that was a big help. With my sister, she was a little bit better set up because she was there with her partner. They traveled together versus me traveling by myself. And also, she had already living and jobs lined up, and her partner also had a family there. So I feel that it was a different experience for her than me. But the fact that you're still missing your loved ones and your family is probably similar.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And you also started different jobs, different careers when you moved to Canada. I remember you were dog mushing. How was that? How?
I started as a housekeeper, couldn't speak anything, and I remember working with these two girls who were also from Europe. I don't want to name the country, so I don't want to offend anyone. But yeah, they were just plain mean, you know, like they would never explain anything, and it was really tough. Then when I moved to the Yukon, which was another move, I was working as a dog musher's helper here in Dawson City, Yukon. And that was a really interesting experience because the place where I was staying and working from was off grid. So that means that there's no electricity, you have to use generator, you have to travel across a river, which is 1 kilometer across. And it also freezes and breaks up in springtime. So there's like definitely challenges in terms of different lifestyle for me coming from a city. But I love the adventure. The only downside was that unfortunately the employer I was working for, there was a mental health issues, and that led me to leave this job, unfortunately. But I learned so much that I'm still, at the end, I'm thankful for the opportunity because she was the one who really taught me how to speak English and really explained all these cultural differences in terms of how to use it in time and place. So
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
that was different.
How did your past experiences or skills you gained in Czech Republic help you when you started new in Canada?
I think one of those would be making something out of nothing. That's basically what I was going by, you know, like there's so, at some points, like unless you have it really prepared and you plan for this, I feel that a lot of it is actually like kind of try and see and also see how it resonates with you, the whole thing, you know. So that was my experience anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. Fake it till you make it. I remember when you were working in that garden shop and they didn't want to pay you. I was working in the law firm and I called them to complain that you talked to me as your lawyer. And then they were also doing some shady stuff and they were like, oh, we already fixed this. And I was just like, okay, what are you fixing? And they explained something completely different. I was like, all right, that's good. But also make sure to pay Anezka properly.
Yeah, no, that was quite interesting. Working in a greenhouse, they were like, "Oh, she doesn't speak English. We don't really have to pay her, you know. She's a great workhorse. Like, who cares, you know? She probably doesn't even know."
Yeah,
She's
exactly.
coming from like Eastern Europe, straight right on them. That was great.
Yeah, no, for sure. How did you maintain resilience and determination when you started new and over in Canada?
I think just keeping open mind, generally, like knowing that I can always come back home, you know, that's really what it comes down to. But also maintaining resilience came from also doing lots of sports, having certain routine, you know, that's I've always had in my life. And I
Mhm.
find that definitely helped me to be resilient. Also coming from Czech, where there was like 40 years of communism, you kind of grow up in resilience,
That's
in
true.
sense, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think we were taught to be resilient by our parents a lot. And
Yeah, there was no other way, unfortunately.
navigating, I have to say that I'm really thankful for being resilient and not giving up at things. Can you discuss the importance of setting goals or having a vision when you start something new? Let's say starting a new career, new job, starting in a new country.
Yeah, no, I think it's always very important to have one, simply because for me it was mostly I want to stay here. I love this country, how welcoming this feels, and I just loved how I felt here. My story doesn't really resonate with having a vision because I didn't really have one when I got here. And for me, it was just like come here for a year and learn something, come back home. That was my original vision. But then when I saw it here and like yeah, then I just realized, okay, I just really want to stay here, at least to come here and work legally. I never planned on staying here for good unless until I met my now husband. Yeah, so for me, I didn't really have a vision, but I think it's important for someone who is consciously deciding, okay, I want to move there, I want to live there, then it's definitely important to set some goals because that can help you to actually, yeah, realize your vision.
I was talking with somebody about it that for me, it's like having too many goals or too tight goals. It makes me anxious because I don't know if I can fulfill them. So they have to be a little bit looser
Yeah,
goals that I have more like a wiggle room to be able to see what I can do or how I can maybe turn out to a different direction if it's not exactly what I want to do. And it's not, I don't think it's about giving up. It's more just learning about who I am and what works for me. Yeah. So
exactly. That's basically as you said it. That's how I felt, I could have this goal, that goal. I never had like one, but in a sense I always had open mind because it kind of helps me flow through my life better.
yeah, no, that's
Adjust, you know?
totally being flexible for sure.
Yeah.
What role did personal growth and self-discovery played for you in starting new? Like, did you feel you grew personally by starting
Oh
new?
yeah, 100%. And I definitely can see it on on my perspective on things right now that I became more Canadian in a sense of being non-judgmental towards others,
Mhm.
mostly seeing a lot of different perspective, and now also being a parent of three young children, that's like another perspective on its own. I don't really need to get into that. But for me, it's definitely the perspective that changed a lot. And also knowing that I can do anything, you really like find this strength within you that, no matter what happens, you will be okay because you will figure things out eventually.
Yeah.
And yeah, and for me, it was a lot of different perspectives, different whatever I experienced here and went through definitely always moved me forward. Like
Mhm.
I like moving forward, and that's just my journey.
Yeah, no, for sure. I totally agree. You grew and grow so much by starting something new and pushing through and like working toward something new and kind of like against all odds and just like yeah, like for me, if I stayed in Czech Republic and never moved anywhere, I think I would be not the person I would like to be, to put it this way.
Yeah,
That
I think
Canada
so too.
helped
Just
me become a better person for sure.
I don't think you would be able to, or at least speaking for myself, I don't think I would be able to open up as many horizons, and also believing that, oh, this is I can actually do. Like I started playing women's hockey after I had my first two kids and discovered that there is this thing of like 50 women in Dawson City, which is only a place of 1,500 residents, that we have this in common and it's amazing, like being in Czech, I don't think I would ever even try that. And I find it's my favorite sport right now.
How
So
cool.
so there's definitely things that, that's just one example, I would say.
Yeah, 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 for sure. You wouldn't try it. No, totally. Did you encounter any setbacks or failure during starting new?
Oh, like all the time. And I think that's part of the learning journey. That's part of life. One of the biggest ones was actually when I was applying for Canadian citizenship. when I was applying for Canadian citizenship, and I just traveled 500 kilometers to get the English test done. And I guess there was also a medical, I can't remember right now. And I knew that I can apply. Then I procrastinated for 2 weeks. And then the government changed. And the new government wasn't too favorable of this, like of all these all old rules. And so I basically missed applying by like 2 weeks of some sort. And then I was just like, oh, whatever, Then year later, I got married, changed my name. So then I just renew my permanent resident card at the time. And yeah, I just kind of forgot about it for some time. But I felt it was definitely one of those like kind of a failures on my part where I could have been more diligent, but I just never really felt that this is the most important thing. Like it's never been like my number one goal to become a citizen here. But I would say, yeah, that's one of the examples I can give you.
Yeah, and so have you become citizen? No.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
actually, funny story. That happened in 2023.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
so I lived here for about like 13 years, and I've never been in a rush. Until me and my family, my kids, everybody, we spent some time in Czech Republic last year, and I found out that my permanent resident card expired. So that was the whole other story to get back here to prove that I've been living here for this long with all the paperwork, which was probably as thick as stock of papers you put into a printer.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then I realized, okay, I really have to be on this. And then, yeah, I just had to do this ceremony last spring. And ever since then, I never looked back. I got my Canadian passport and now I'm happy.
Did you use any strategies when you started new careers, new country, or generally, like, do you think you have a strategy?
I I think that I've always been having like a good routine in terms of if I want to learn something, I just go for it and then I do it. That's always how it works. And in terms of like my career, like it's been always kind of changing, came like I started as like a housekeeper in Canada, then I turned into dog master's helper, also housekeeper supervisor at some point. Then I worked in the greenhouse, as you mentioned. It was like the very beginnings. And then after my boyfriend, now husband, he was in a motorcycle accident. I had also some health issues, then it was a big wake-up call. And at that point, I was lucky enough to get a job in a gold mine because there's still a lot of gold mining around this area. It didn't end in a gold rush. And so I was able to work seasonally, which was really amazing because then over the winter, I was able to go and do a whole bunch of courses, like one of them being like I became a yoga instructor. So I've been teaching in this town since 2013 or 14, I can remember right now. So I've been always like taking some steps, and making the best out of the situation I was in. Not forgetting also the joy of life that I love traveling. So I want to go travel. I want to do this and I want to do that, and really just playing with life, honestly. Now
Nice.
it's a little bit different. It's a different game now with 3 kids, but I still try to prioritize myself because my cup needs to be full as well to keep myself happy.
That's very important. That's good. Can you share any memorable experience from? Well, you have so many memorable experience, but one which stands out from starting new in Canada or in the new careers?
Let me think for a moment. Does it have to be in terms of starting over connected to that, or just, yeah, it
Just
should be?
yeah, something.
Mm. Oh, yeah, actually, it's pretty random, but thinking about just cultural differences, I was on public transportation walking in Kamloops with my dog, and they just wouldn't take a dog on the bus. That's about like one of those. Also, knowing like yeah, like another one's like, and that's pretty connected to the language barrier that was at the beginning, is that when you start learning English, you kind of sound like this person who just dictates things when you speak, like it's just hard to be nice at the beginning when you started learning and speaking. So I had a few encounters just being probably really rude and not even like thinking about it because I just like did whatever I could with my best intentions. So, yeah, that's probably something I
That
can think about right now.
That reminds me of a story 2 years ago. I was in Madrid on some walking tour, and some, I think he was Russian guy, and he came to me also with like a broken English, and he's like, take photo, and I was just like, wow, dude, you're very
Excuse me, mister.
but then I realized it's like that was the best he could do, so I was like, okay, sure, I'll take a picture. But at
Yeah,
first
I
I was
guess like yeah, there were like few more. It's just with the language, like very first time I was working as a housekeeper, I just found a pair of pants lying there, and then I came to the other housekeeper and was like, "Hey, I found like trousers." And it's just like the difference is even in English, they taught us at school was just so very different that like a lot of people had like good laugh about my English at the beginning for sure.
trousers, nice. And what would you think was the most rewarding part of your starting over or starting new in Canada, starting new careers?
Yeah, I think it's the perspective on life in general, you just have more understanding for a lot of things and just knowing that you have a choice, knowing that you can change anything anytime you want, that you have control over your life most of the time. I think that's one of the biggest ones. And also knowing the second language, like really well, being citizen of another country, like all these things are great.
It might be even more useful in the future. And if you had to give an advice to somebody who wants to start new in a new country or a new career,
I would say, yeah, don't be afraid because you have nothing to regret, really. You just kind of try it and see. And if it's not for you, you can always go home. But unless you try, you don't know. I would just say go for it and don't be scared. If that's something you want truly, then it can happen.
perfect. Well, thank you so much. What's next for you? Do you have any plans to
Well,
start something?
next for me, right now, I'm more oriented on my kids speaking my first language, which is Czech. And for me, I'm just looking into coming back to work in September, which is really exciting because right now I work for First Nation government and it's been really like challenging in a good way and very exciting work because it actually combines everything I've learned in the past. So I really love my job. So I'm excited about that. And then, yeah, once the kids grow up a little bit more, we gonna travel more with them, hopefully. And yeah, just also can't wait for winter to play more hockey. That's about that.
Nice, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for sharing your stories and
Yeah,
insights.
thanks for having me.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Tak počkej, já to vypnu.